Welcome to the Lightforge. This is ADWCTA.
What's up, guys? This is Merps. We are 2 days away from Twitch Rivals.
And because we haven't actually officially announced it, we're gonna officially announce it here. We're in Twitch Rivals! Yay!
Amazing. So, who is the third teammate?
So, you're the third teammate? We're on Trump's team. So if you look at Arena HS, I think Kai made a post about all the teams, and this was released by Twitch Rivals. So the other major arena team with all is there any other team that has all arena players? I know some other teams have some arena players. I know ADWs is in. I know Redbeard is in, but the other all arena
Dexter
players.
is also an arena player.
Dexter is also an arena player.
Is, I would consider that a pure arena team.
Okay.
And there's only one other one that I would consider an arena team. It's Stan Udachi and Goddammit. They both play a lot of arena. I know, obviously Stan Udachi plays a lot of constructed as well, but he just plays a ton of Hearthstone. Right.
I think as long as you play a lot of arena, you're considered an arena player, because who cares what else you play?
You don't have to be a purist or anything.
Being a purist is not helpful.
The only thing is on the list, it says the third teammate is to be determined.
So you don't know exactly if they're going to get an arena player or not.
As of right now, I would consider that team 100% arena players as well. So 4 out of the 12.
Yeah, and the one we didn't mention yet is Dreads' team, which has Shady Bunny and Educated Collins, the champs from last time.
I think people would see that one as the prohibitive favorite.
Hey now, we can do some upsets. So I would say that team was the prohibitive favorite for getting the high score, but this is just like last time, right? It's the same format where the top 4 teams are going to end up doing a playoff format, and face each other with open deck lists, and they're going to draft additional decks each time they win a round. So after the initial portion, which determines whether you get into the playoffs or not, it's not arena anymore. It's some other limited format that does not exist in Hearthstone. So
it's also just it's not best of one, but you basically just have to win your individual matchup, and then if you do, great. If you don't, you don't move on. So the beginning portion, there's some wiggle room in that if you get one slightly subpar deck, that's fine. You can overcome it. You face different people. You have more chances.
The arena part. In the playoffs, it's playoffs, right? It's supposed to be exciting and a little coin tossy. But before, in the last time when we did this, which was in June, it took the top 4 teams to make the playoffs out of 40. So the arena portion was very, very, very important, right? Me and Tex got 7th or 9th or something, and we were not really close at all to getting to the playoffs. Here, there's only 12 teams, so top 4 is just top third. So that's the equivalent of I don't know, if you had the top 12 teams the last time from the last Twitch Rivals all go into the playoffs. So the arena skills impact on this one is going to be lower than in the prior ones. So the first time Twitch Rivals happened, it was 100% arena, right? There was no playoffs. Then they added the playoffs, but you still had to be top 10% on your actual arena games as a team. And now you just have to be top 1/3. So a lot more wiggle room.
I agree. I'm looking forward to it. I think, well, first of all, I always appreciate whenever Twitch does an event like this. I just think there were too many teams last time, and I think that the broadcast suffered from it a little bit as well, in which there were just too many people. You had to track too many things. And I think if you want to create a tighter viewing experience for everyone, it's a lot easier, right?
Yeah.
And now you can, especially because there's still a lot of people to show, but now, for example, you could do a triple screen between Dreads, Collins, and Shady, and then you, me, and Trump as well, and to see that interaction there. So I think it'll be really cool. The only thing I regret is that Dreads is not casting again, since he did
Yeah.
such a great job last time, and he really brought a ton of knowledge, because the other casters, they might be good at casting. Admirable obviously has tons and tons of casting experience, but his lack of arena experience really kind of shows. And Dreads was great for just saying, it's like, okay, well, here's why this, here's why Shady made this kind of seemingly weird play.
Here's
right?
why
It's because
Viola
he's
Worm
playing-
is being drafted by all the arena players.
right,
Which
or
is
like
funny because now Viola Worm is not an auto pick anymore.
I know it really isn't an auto pick. You're still going to see it a lot. You're still going to pick it a decent amount, but it is not the auto pick it was before.
Yeah, I remember in the end of
it's funny.
January when we did the first Twitch Rivals, it was like, yeah, that was the Worm meta. Like auto pick every time, it was super misbucketed and it was super good. Now it's less good and it's less misbucketed. So I find myself passing Worms all the time.
The one thing that is constant, though, Scorcher. Scorcher was, and Scorcher is, and probably will be ever present.
Scorcher's so good in this meta. So we're gonna, I guess we'll transition into actually talking about the meta. So the way this Lightforge is going to go is, I think we updated you on Twitch Rivals. It's happening on Tuesday at noon on Eastern time, which is like 9 a.m. in Pacific time, and like somewhere in the night for Europe. So definitely tune in. We'll be there. Merps will be on the Go channel. I'll be on the ADWCTA channel as usual, and Trump will be on his channel. And we'll be doing the first. Is it 6 hours? Is it 5 hours? We don't have the rule list exactly, but yeah, it'll be the first X number of hours to do 3 runs. And after that, we will. After that is the playoffs, which, you know, if we're in, we'll be playing in it. If we're not in, we will be watching like last time and commentating ourselves with our, with the goat peoples, and it'll be fun. So definitely tune in on Tuesday. It's always fun to do a Twitch Rivals event.
Yeah, it is really fun. And once again, the one thing, if there's anything else to be slightly disappointed by, it's the fact that because there are less teams, some of our friends in the community aren't able to participate, right? So we weren't even invited. We had to jump on board Trump's team as well. So like tons of people that you might have thought would be participating are not participating. Your old teammate Tex is unfortunately not participating. Sun Glitters is not participating. Tons and tons of people that I would say.
Yeah, I mean, we listed all the arena
qualified
players, and the other people are not participating because the team list slimmed down from 80 teams to from 80 players essentially to 36. So hopefully they'll expand the field again in a future Twitch Rivals event, and we'll get more arena players. But this one's focus is, like, I think it's fair to say, right? Because you go from top 10% or impact, the arena portion's impact to top 10% to the arena portion's impact to top 33%. So this is also a less, even though the same portion of the games played are in arena style, the impact of how well you do in that portion is just so much less than prior iterations of these tournament rules. And it's more of a general limited format or tournament that uses the arena.
We're probably going to have less less of a murderer's row this time, just because there's no 80 like experienced Hearthstone players queuing up at the same time.
See, I did very well on Murderer's Row. I hated it because as I was playing, I was like, crap, this is not the arena. But I ended up with 11 wins on a mediocre like Warlock deck, taking down like half of my victories were against other tournament participants in that first run. So if you don't know what Merps is talking about, it's like everyone starts at the same time and we all have new accounts. So think about how many new arena players there are in Hearthstone at any given time. And we all had to start at the same time. So we all just matched up against each other, all 80 players. This time it'll be a lot less.
There were a couple 0-3s from people who started.
Because they're facing other tournament players, right? You're all of a sudden matched in your 0-0 games against some of the best players in the world. That's not fair.
And then about half of those will lose, so they will face each other.
I
Oh
lost
man.
my first game, and I was just like facing. I was like, "This is the most ridiculous deck. This guy knows exactly what he's doing. Like, you don't even know who you're facing, but you're just like, ah." And then I knocked Collins out, and I felt really, really bad. But obviously that didn't matter because he ended up winning. Um, but yeah, it's going to be less of that, which I think is like from a viewer's perspective, if they were better able to coordinate that part and like really call out whenever two people in the tournament were actually facing each other, like that would have been really good from a viewer's perspective. But we were all blind to what other people were. We just knew that we were facing a tournament player because the names that we had were very like all tournament account names had a unique handle that ended with the word patron. So
Yeah. It was like
uh,
sneaky patron, what was that? Like stealth patron or
I was
whatever.
Forest patron.
Your forest patron.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what mine was. I saw divine patron as well. They have all of these adjectives.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing we're gonna get that again, and I do agree. Whenever they were able to capture those participant versus participant games, it
Mm-hmm.
was just fantastic because you get that true tournament feel, and you get to see what people are thinking, and people are because you get that tournament feel, but people are still streaming, so they're explaining things, they're
Yeah.
talking to chat.
Mm-hmm.
It makes for a great experience.
Okay, so we let's move on to the substantive portion of this Lightforge. Tune in on Tuesday. We'll be there. Trump will be there, and we'll hopefully do well. For this podcast, let's talk about the meta. So the meta changed a bit in that they rebucketed stuff, but not really. The meta didn't really change all that much because of the rebucketing, because they didn't rebucket that many cards too significantly, and they did not micro adjust. As we say this, we know that there will be a balance patch happening for all of Hearthstone because they're nerfing a bunch of cards, none of which are in the arena right now. It's stuff like extra arms is going to be is going to be 3 mana instead of 2, like it always should have been, and as it used to be. Like Conjurer's Calling, they're making 4 mana instead of 3, like it always should have been. It's just a bunch of good nerfs overall for the ones that affect arena, but none of those cards are in the arena right now. But that patch is going to go through sometime tonight or tomorrow, right before the tournament. And we know that there's an upcoming micro adjust patch at some point. So if it's the same time, we're going to be in an actual whole new meta going into this tournament. But if we are not, if it does not adjust, then we're in essentially the same meta as we've been in since the launch of Saviors. And it's kind of a weird
Yeah,
meta.
it's kind of a weird meta. When they rebucketed, it changed things around the margins, the fringes. So cards that you saw before, you're going to see a lot less now, just because of rebucketing. They moved Rap Golem all the way up,
Yeah,
so
but you
that's
never
one of
saw
those
Rap Golem
things.
anyway.
Yeah, it was not as prevalent. It wasn't like Scribe when Scribe was
Yeah,
in the
because it's a
meta.
rare card, not a common card.
So you see that less. But yeah, the meta nowadays is it is very interesting. You definitely get to see the control decks, you see the mid-range decks, but what you really don't see are the pure aggro decks. Very sad. Very, very sad indeed. I have tried it. It's not too successful.
You can
Very
do it with
sad.
Hunter. We got a 12-win run from Hunter that I got last week that's coming up on Wednesday onto our
You
YouTube
know,
channel.
yeah, but you know what the funny thing I found is because typically the general rule is that um aggro doesn't really care about quality. It's really mid-range and control that worries about like that actual needs quality. And now
Well,
if you
Control
just
doesn't
go
need quality either. Control just needs the right cards, right?
it needs the right
You gotta
cards.
like luck
Right, right.
out and get
So
enough of the control cards.
that they are more draft dependent.
Yeah,
But now, if you go into a draft, you just fall into this sort of defensive, mid-rangey, controlly style a lot of times, and you kind of have to shift your draft towards aggro, like really shift towards it in order to do it. And Hunter is the only one that can really do it as well. But if you draft Hunter, it's like, well, why don't I just fall back on drafting good cards, like a ton of really, really, really good cards? So that's kind of the state that we're in, and part of it is because of all of the super prevalent defensive cards that are in the meta right now.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, so we talked about, if you want to hear about our first impressions of the meta, go back to Lightforges, and we're pretty much in that same meta. I don't want to recap too much here. I want to delve a little deeper into like how to do well in this meta and what to do here. But generally, the first part about your curve is that you will just get twos. You will be offered twos. They will be fine. You will end up taking some twos. It's not that important to get twos. It is very important to get threes because they're stronger generally. But if you want to just start your curve on three, that's a little dicey of a proposition because there are still really fast decks and there are twos that will get through to you because everyone's taking twos because there's too many twos being offered, whatever their quality. So getting some solid twos that either preserve your card advantage or have some kind of initiative so that they can be usable in the late game too is important, but definitely don't put yourself in a position where you have to take like 6 twos. Like if you're taking 6 solid 2-drops, you're going a little too fast for this meta. So that's how to draft at the start of it. Towards the end of it, and this is like just an observation about the meta. There are so many decks right now that have basically an endless amount of cards. Like Merps was talking about the defensive drafting, which the game kind of pushes you to, right? You got like Bone Wraith, Dragon Ball Scorcher, Karkat Defender, Flame Ward. There's going to be a lot of decks you see that will just have a crap ton of defense because they're good cards and they're not even like super misbucketed or anything. They're like good for their bucket, not even like super premium for their bucket, but they're good for their bucket and the meta favors them. Because we were talking about how many 2-drops there are still aggro decks out there. They don't do very well, but they exist and you have to deal with them. So you're in a meta now where there's a lot of defensive decks. And when you have a lot of defensive decks, you need to last longer. There are so many decks right now that fall on the other end of the spectrum where they just literally never run out of cards. Like they'll never kill you until they like are fully on the board and you have run out of cards. But they have very little power to end the game. But they also will never run out of cards, so you can't wear them out, and you have to get through their millions of taunts, good amount of heals, stuff like Flame Wards, like all that kind of stuff. So, how do you do something like that, right? You do that with because that's the predominant type of deck that's in this meta right now, almost regardless of class. But rogues definitely fall very heavily into that style. Mages fall very heavily into that style. Warlocks do it with Zoo. So you got your top classes all falling into that kind of basic style. And the way to stop it is there is none. That's why it's a weird meta. It's because you can't. There's no way for you to stop the aggro and beat out endless card advantage without yourself trying to have endless card advantage and playing super defensively. But there's enough swing in this meta that for a good player to play in that super defensive way is not good for your overall win rate. So you can't be as defensive as you would want to be. Like if you were only facing good players, this meta would just be about who would be more defensive. But because you need to get that extra win rate in the arena, you need to get to that 75% win rate or whatever percentage. Like as you become a better and better player, what you need in this meta is different. So if you are hitting maybe 60% win rate in this meta, I would say go more defensive. That's a clear area where you will get more advantages. Get your taunts, get your heals, mostly taunts, and make sure you get your card advantage because you need to outlast the people. But if you want that 75% win rate, which most top arena players do want and are trying to get, you have to also be able to control for the swing. Like if a game goes on for 30 turns versus a game that goes on for 10 turns, the game that goes on for 30 turns has 3 times more chance for the board to swing against you. And you probably don't have that many more tools in which to swing the board back again. And that's bad because then you'll just lose extra games that you normally were in control of. So to deal with that, you need to spice into your deck ways where once you control the board to actually take advantage and push and end the game. So in addition to your normal survival based, taunt based, heal based, card advantage based style that everyone's kind of needs to like get on board with, you have to add a good amount of reach into your deck. And reach is very hard to come by. So you're not going to actually get a good reach, but the games go on for so long anyway, and you just need one good swing to end the game. So having some reach cards in your deck is a lot better than having no reach cards. I think that's very critical in this meta.
Yeah, I agree. And this is where we see something like Pit Croc
Mm-hmm.
come into play. It's a card that I wouldn't say is super premium. It's definitely not super premium. And we talked about how if you do the comparison of that versus Kraken, Kraken is typically better. You know, you have a lot of overkill potential. Well, not overkill the the key term, but you sometimes most of the time actually don't utilize the full 5 damage when you hit something on the board. But having just a neutral way of dealing 5 damage, it's so powerful for the reasons that you just laid out. Where if you accept the fact that whenever you go into these sort of long attrition, defensive, trench style battles, sure, you could be the lucky individual that drafted that 1% deck and you know you're going to roll over everyone. But if you just have the typical deck, you don't want to get into that situation where, you know, you're facing the other priest that has 3 mind controls. You don't want to face that mage that has, you know, 4 ethereal conjurers and outvalues you and gets like puzzle boxes out of the conjurers as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to put yourself in that situation where you say, let's play it all out and I will slowly get incremental advantages, because you give yourself a good chance, but 1 mind control, 1 scream,
Yeah.
1 puzzle box can end that. So that's where something like a Pit Croc comes in, and you're just like, okay, well, this isn't, you know, I'm not pushing the tempo really. I'm not really pushing the speed of the game. But if you're just gonna hang back and I see an advantage, I can really just try to end the game here in 1 to 2 turns, so that you can't puzzle box me and triple mind control me to death.
Because you will get puzzle box and triple mind controlled. You won't get triple mind controlled, but you will get mind controlled. You will get double pit croc, right? We're talking about pit crocs. There's decks out there with some crazy things right now. So yeah, it feels really weird to play in this meta. It's almost like everybody is waiting for the counter attack once you get up to a certain amount of win. Like, no one's really making too aggressive of a move. You're just kind of like setting stuff up. You're not even being like too strategic about it. You're just kind of playing whatever like stuff you have that's playable. That's not like, you know, it has initiative and so you need to like save it. And then the board kind of resolve itself one way or the other, and then you try to stay alive or you try to flip it. It's a lot slower of a game and a lot less, like, the board is messier. So the board is messier. Your win conditions are messier in terms of whether you're on the aggressive or you're on the defensive. Like, your role is a lot less defined in this meta than it is in most prior metas, where you can, based on like the class that they're playing or like their openers, you can know like who's the aggressor and who's playing defense here. This just goes back and forth because people all have very similar. Well, not people all have. A majority of the decks out there, when you get to a high enough win rate, are in that similar like slow-ish mid-range kind of style. But there is still diversity. You can make control deck works. You can, at least in Hunter, you can make aggro work. I don't know about any other class right now. Probably Warlock too. Warlock and Hunter. That's usually my, like, whenever a meta gets too stale is not the right word, like too stally. Like, whenever a meta gets too on the board stally, which usually happens when powerful and common taunts are printed a lot.
I would say like too homogenous, something
Okay.
like that.
Homogenous, stally, like there's just a lot of random stuff on the board, and you can't use skill to win the board, and you can't use curve to win the board. So you can't build a deck that will definitely win you the board, and you can't use your gameplay skill to win the board. So in those situations, you're either playing a pretty dragged out game where like a lot of things can happen and your RNG spikes up high, or you need to find a way to end it quickly. And the lowest RNG ways to end the game quickly right now are in Hunter and Warlock, I think. So at least in Twitch Rivals, I will be really heavily favoring those two classes. Rogue is also a pretty stable class overall, and the best right now in terms of win rate. So that'll be in the mix too. But yeah, that would be my pick. Just because I don't like going into that late game style, where everyone is going to the late game style, and especially in this meta, there's not a lot of card draw. There's a lot of card generation. So whenever you're going into the late game and you're getting more cards, a lot of those cards are random cards. And that's not what you want to be doing when you're trying to keep a high win rate. Like, that's totally great if you're trying to keep a 50% win rate or above a 50% win rate. But when you need to go like 75%, you're fighting against the RNG every time there's RNG.
Yeah. So every time you play against Rogue, you're kind of also playing a little of every single class, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every time they mugger, every time they play the Pharaoh Cat, you're just like, well, I wonder what this thing is going to be. So yeah, and
Hallucination, that new card, that 2-mana card that gives you 2 like stuff,
random spells,
spells from an opponent, like what?
From any class. I know it's terrible. They could get Totemic Might, but they could also get.
They could get Totemic Might. You mean I will always get Totemic Might?
You will always get Totemic Might. They will always get Meteor, obviously. So. When you want consistency and when you want reach, it's kind of funny because we've always talked about the Hunter hero power as something that held it back, but it's really perfect for this meta because when you get to the mid/end game and then you want that consistency to end the game, what could be more consistent than 2 mana, 2 damage every single turn? That's you automatically at that time. What you want to do is like, oh, geez, I want to put my opponent on a clock because I don't want 10 turns later, 2 puzzle boxes later, for this crazy stuff to potentially turn the game around. So you just start hero powering and you automatically put them on the timer without having to invest any cards at all.
So, and going with that, like that level of consistency, Hunters are obviously best. But mages have it too. Mages have it half of what hunters have. So while they may have some RNG cards, like Glyph is back, and Puzzle Box is obviously super random, but that's an epic spell, mages are surprisingly consistent. There's actually not as much RNG in Mage as you might think that there is. There is much more RNG. Like the prior iteration of Mage, for example, in Savior, in Shadows, Mage had a crap ton of RNG. It was probably more RNG than Rogue, at least on par with Rogue. But now, Rogue is so much more RNG. And Mage is actually kind of stable. Druids still need to be buffed. Druids can go phase 2 with their hero power, and so can Rogues to get a little bit of consistency there on ending the game. But again, most of the ways that people are defensive now are taunts. So when that's your primary source of defensiveness, Druids and Rogues aren't going to get through as well as mages and hunters, especially like Rogue. Rogues don't have a lot of reach that goes through taunts. They have Eviscerate. That's kind of it.
No, Rogue is all about card generation now.
Yeah,
totally. It's all about kind of small initiatives, and of course, Sap, the best removal tool in the game. But and the muggers are amazing. They just chip in some damage, put a little bit of stuff on the board, gives you a minion. It could be good, it could be bad, but overall, it's probably going to be pretty good because the body that you get is already pretty decent. So yeah, like people like to think of Casino Mage. It's really Casino Rogue.
Yep.
And Mage is, I think people tend to think about Puzzle Box, but Puzzle Box is truly the only crazy thing that they have. Everything else is fairly consistent.
Blast Wave.
Yeah, true. But I mean the
Blast Wave, by the way, which is epic as well, I think, right?
Right. And the end result of what you get with the blast wave, that's random. The
Yeah, the
effect,
effect is
that the front loaded effect is consistent, right? It's not like lightning storm in which it can high roll or low roll. So even that I would say is fairly consistent there.
Yep. It is yeah, so we have, I don't know. This is why I've played Rogue a good amount of time since Sabers came out, and I've just never been impressed with it. There's really, like, the way to play Rogue is what we were talking about: defensive, late, mid-rangey, get your card generations in, don't die. You don't have that great of reach, but you can get some reach. But you got to get through the taunts, and mostly just rely on the fact that you have better tools than your opponent for stabilizing the board. You have better tools than your opponent for a card generation and getting to the late game, and getting that card advantage in the late game. And you have a great drafting consistency and not necessarily needing 2-drops with your dagger. And in gameplay, right, you can't miss a 2. You will never miss a 2 as a rogue. So those are your advantages. But it's like a slow, grindy kind of playstyle that involves a lot of RNG because of the card generation. And that kind of holds it back, in my opinion. Normally, like, rogues pro class, right? Like, easy rogues with the dagger, with the how you do openers, pro class. In the arena, like, you always want, like, if the rogues are normally doing 54% win rate, its actual win rate among top players are going to be like 58 compared to the other classes, right? It has that bonus to it. But right now, I don't think it does. I think the RNG holds rogue back so much that, yes, they're the top class in the arena right now. I'm not, like, disputing that, but personally, I'd rather play Hunter. I'd rather play Warlock. Warlock has very little RNG. It actually has RNG stabilization effects. Hunters have, like, one. Okay, fine. Deadly shots RNG, but if you don't do deadly shots, they have that Hunter's pack RNG, and that's kind of it.
And in terms of RNG, it's very controlled RNG. You know the 3 categories of cards that you get, and because you get 3 categories of cards, you know you're always going to get a minion. You know you're always going to get reach, and that's very comforting.
Yeah.
It's not just it's not like a Kabbalist tome where you get a lot of spells, but you're just like, I don't know. I'm not sure what
it's
kind of.
It's also not like a Kabbalist tome because it costs 2 mana less.
Yes.
So
very good.
Yeah. Oh god, Hearthstone's gone. In terms of, like, balance for these new Hearthstone cards, like, I kind of get it. They're just trying to hit the top of their balance curve because nothing, like, really pokes out too hard. But then they'll mess up, like, and then if you're trying to hit 150 on our tier list, for example, and you mess up, well, now you have a 180 card and you have a problem, right? Like, that's where something like Desert Spear is at. Like, I feel like they just messed that up in terms of how much more powerful than a normal card that card is going to be. And maybe it's a constructed thing where it's really not that powerful and constructed. It's like the right amount of powerful and constructed, but just purely stat wise in arena and what it does, it's not. I don't think it was ever too hard to figure out how powerful it was. And that's really, like, the engine that Hunters run on right now. Like, every time it gets to turn 3 or any other turn, every time when I'm facing a Hunter, I say, if you have a Hunter Spear, I lose. So I lose a lot against Hunters. But it's not because I have good plays around Hunter Spear. I'm not Desert Spear, right? I'm not like, oh, I could do this other move that only sacrifices 1 stat on the board, and then I'm good if they play Hunter Spear. Desert Spear.
Desert Spear.
It's that doesn't usually happen. Like, instead, it's like, if they play Desert Spear, I'm gonna lose anyway, like 95% of the time. So what's the difference between 95 and 100% of the time? It's not that big. I'd rather get that extra stat or 2 onto the board, and lock down my chances of winning otherwise. Like, that's how game changing that one card is, and it's a common weapon. So expansion, new expansion, bonus, all that. So it's seen a lot.
Yep. Before you went to talk about Hunters, you mentioned Warlock and your comfort in Warlock. You've always liked Warlock. I think you've played Warlock in every single Rivals event, and I'm not saying it's your class or anything, but I think you've always liked Warlock more than the average arena player.
Yeah, I think for the last few years, like whenever Warlock is like zoo-ish, like ish, not even like fully zoo, like mid range, totally
Yeah,
fine.
sure.
Whenever Warlock is not like control Warlock or like combo Warlock, I'm all about Warlock because their game plan is very simple and their advantage is very simple. And when their advantage is simple, you can craft decks that do that, and they have a lot of ways to like screw things over. But in this particular meta, it's that every class has ways to stabilize, but only hunters and warlocks have dedicated hero powers that always give you an entire win condition. So I know you tend to go towards hunter because of that win condition, and it's just very comforting and it's stabilizing. Like
Yeah.
that's your stabilizing effect on your whole entire deck, and it plays very differently than other classes. For warlock, your stabilizing effect is you will always have more card advantage than other people as long as you don't like die. Which makes your game plan very very clear. Don't die, and don't draft like so thin that you actually run out of your 30 cards, which is not that easy to do in the arena. So once you have that like anchor effect, you can do things in metas that other people are not prepared for because other people won't be prepared for your kind of deck because they don't see enough warlocks, they don't see enough hunters that play that way, and they don't see them because it's just 1 out of 9 classes. If only 1 out of 9 classes does something in a totally like different way, the meta is not going to adjust to that in the arena. There's just not a critical mass of warlocks ever running around or hunters ever running around, unless they get super unbalanced. So I tended to go. I think I tend to play hunter as well, like hunter and warlock. And in the last 2 Twitch rivals, in both of them I got 11 wins with a warlock. There's no like secret to it. It's just a class that works kind of in every meta, even when it's not blatantly powerful. And I know people like to high roll in these tournaments because they're like facing so many people, but I don't really believe in that. I don't like except for the times when I get to like re-roll the actual draft. If I'm not re-rolling the actual draft, I go for like I trust my gameplay and I trust like my luck, I guess. So I always try to draft pretty normally, and when you're drafting pretty normally, you want to lessen your chances of getting like a really bad deck, right? It's like really hard in Warlock to get a really bad deck, really hard.
That's true.
It's
Yeah.
also pretty hard in Hunter to get a really bad deck.
Right now, before they micro adjust, like Tuesday morning.
Yeah, but if you've ever played like mage in this meta or like paladin in this meta, it's quite easy to get a really bad deck. Like you can low roll. That's entirely possible. Like I'd say like 15-20% of the time you low roll. Priest as well. Like that's just part of what playing the class would be. And if you low roll, you don't get something that works, and things kind of fall apart on you. So I like classes that don't have the chance to low roll. The problem, which is also why I usually like Druid, but Druid is just crap in this meta. Like I played Druid, it's not. They're never going 12. They're so yeah. So that's where we kind of are in this meta. I don't think we talk about rogues enough, but rogues are so prevalent in this meta that you kind of have to look at them. Even if you're not using rogue, you have to look at them as how you deal with a rogue, right? Hunters are perfectly equipped right now to deal with a rogue because you have your ability to get through their taunts, which means that by the time they establish control, you need to get enough damage on them that you kill them. It's a very straightforward game plan, and it works. The problem with warlocks is you're going to have to play the rogue on their own terms. Rogue wants to hang out and get more resources. You want to hang out and get more resources. Well, guess what? One of you is going to run out of resources. So, generally speaking, in a rogue v warlock matchup, because the rogue has pretty much like a rogue that you see at like 10 wins, for example, will have so much resources and resource generation that you as the warlock are probably the one that's like a little afraid of decking yourself. So you are on a timer rather than the rogue, the way most current rogues are composed.
They have too much stuff.
They
They have
do.
too many cards that make cards and too much. Yeah, it's insane. I don't know. I mean, this is where the state of Rogue is now.
Yeah. So as a warlock, you're kind of forced out of your game, and it's not that good of a matchup for warlock. And so that's really the thing that's holding warlocks back the most in this meta. Um, yeah. Also, if you're if you want to like go high, you need to face rogues. Rogues have hard removals everywhere. Way too many hard removals. You also have to face a decent amount of warlocks for that matter, and warlocks have hard removals everywhere. And you have to face a decent amount of mages, and mages just have removals of all kinds in every possible way now, and a ton of it. So I don't know what like the big stuff, the big bodies they're not what they used to be. They're not what they used to be. Like we're talking about Worm, right? Not only was Worm moved up a few buckets, which is what makes it less dominant, but also Worm itself. Like if you look at our tier list score for Worm, I don't think we ever rated Worm like a super premium because it wasn't. But it's at the lowest I've ever seen Worm be rated. And that's because big bodies in general just don't get it done for just being a big body. It gets removed. They can leave it on the board because they usually have enough health. They don't even care if you hit face with it once or even twice. There's so many like chip taunts that they can still execute their plan if your plan is just to like use your worm and like pop it at some point. Like think about what is that called? Wraith, Bone Wraith, right? They drop a worm, you play a Bone Wraith and like two other stuff on the board. Well, they better have enough health or else you're going to win the game by punching their face. That worm is not going to get through them often, and you probably have more taunts in your hand. It's not a good meta for Worm. It's still obviously a very good card, better than a Yeti in this meta, I would still say, but it doesn't have that like always pick mark on it by a long shot.
Yep. So that's kind of where we're at. You're still going to see games go long, but the games that are going longer because of card generation, they're going longer because of awkward board states created by Bone Wraiths. They're not going longer because the successful decks all have Violet Worms.
Yeah.
Because Violet Worms actually, if Violet Worm was a good card, it would actually end the game fairly soon.
Yep.
Because it's able to go face. And that's why Worm was so good in the previous meta, in the first meta in which we saw the worms, because there weren't this many annoying taunts. So as soon as a worm came down, it really shortened the it put a clock on the game overall. And here, it just doesn't do the same thing anymore. So the big drops that you really want, the big drops that are really defining the meta, are things such as Amani Warbear, which gives you initiative and taunts up. Things like Pit Croc, which gives you an immediate effect and, more importantly, can go 5 damage to the face. So these are things that are shaping the meta because of things that you might not think of so much, such as Bone Wraith, or even less so than that, just really small taunts like people get the 3 mana 2/3 that create. Yeah, that creates like the double 1/1 taunt scarabs, stuff like that.
The infested goblin.
Yeah, the infested goblin.
Infested goblins, by the way, I know people draft them, but like I have yet to see an infested goblin and go, oh no. Like even though it seems like that would be that kind of card. Really? I guess maybe I spread out on the board more than you do.
Oh well, no, I was playing a oh god, I was playing a hunter run, and I played the 5 mana 8/8 that gave all minions reborn.
Oh god.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
fine. If you give a reborn, it's a really freaking good card. But generally, like, as you know, the way people use it as an understated 3 mana taunt that gives you more taunts later, like, it does end up taunting for a lot of stuff, but that's like 5 mana, and it's not getting 5 mana's worth of taunt out of it, and it's getting way less than 5 mana's worth of stats out of it. So, I don't know. I don't see it as super effective. But yeah, it's there's so many random taunts. It sucks. Also, what sucks, and this is like everything has a counter now, which creates these like really freaking high swing games. Like Stoneskin Basilisk, super good card, right? But so many things counter it now, way more than before, right? Just
Bees.
Bees, no, okay, even ignoring bees,
Yeah,
like
you're not
Bug
gonna see
Collector.
druids.
Bug
Yeah.
Collector freaking counters it, right? We were talking about Desert Spear. Desert Spear obviously counters it. Rogues have always countered it just with its hero power. So, like, this is a pretty terrible meta for Stoneskin Basilisk, too. Which I guess is nice because otherwise it's overpowered in the arena, but it also means it's super high swing. Like, are you not going to take Basilisks? No, you're still going to take Basilisks. They're still, like, a really good card. But you're going to, like, have to suffer really high swings from it in this meta. So it's, like... I don't know. I don't like it. I like low swing, and Basilisk was always high swing, but now it's high swing both ways. So it went from like potentially one way high swing to potentially both ways high swing. It became the equivalent now of like actually like imagine if you put out a 8/1 creature for like 3 mana or something. Like that's probably not too unbalanced, but it's a terrible card to put in the arena.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem with it. You could say that about a lot of cards nowadays, though.
Yeah.
Which is why we have the meta that we do.
Yep. It's rock paper scissory, not like on the bright side, it's not rock paper scissory by class. Like I don't think classes are super countered by other classes more than normal. But it is rock paper scissory on deck archetype, and more micro than that, really rock paper scissory now on what particular card you play. Like everything has a counter, in which case reduces a lot of the skill, right? Okay. So
You want to talk about Quicksand?
I guess I'll talk about Quicksand. Let's move on to Card Good Bad. Card Good Bad this week, we're moving down. It's actually hard to find interesting cards in this meta. Like we talked about Bone Wraith. We'll talk about Pit Crocolisk at some point. But right now, let's talk about Quicksand Elemental. It's a rare card. You don't see it as often. It's a 2 mana, 3/2, a neutral card. Battlecry, give all enemy minions -2 attack this turn. It's rated very high, a 128. That's pretty much Basilisk levels. Not quite a Primordial Drake, but Fungalmancer levels. Like, it's that kind of impactful. Oh, also, back to the meta point, they raised Fungalmancer a whole bunch of buckets. So now Fungalmancer is actually kind of difficult to draft. So they bucketed it correctly now. And
you have to think about it now.
Yeah, and that's a problem because it's one of the ways that actually ends games. And now games are really not ending because Fungalmancer is taking up its proper like valuation.
Right.
So that I think that more than anything else was the biggest change in the last rebucketing is that Fungalmancer got moved up, and so you see less Fungalmancers, and that affects the meta. It certainly makes me more annoyed. I don't like the design of Fungalmancer, but it served a function in the meta that now is kind of missing. So anyway, go ahead. You want to say something about Fungal?
Because it's so missing, I find myself picking it. It's in such a competitive bucket. I mean, it's like top bucket now.
Yeah.
But because reach and because like creating this window in which you can just win the game is so important, I still find myself picking it. Well, it depends on the class and it depends on quite a few things, but it's even more advantageous to have the Fungalmancer than was in previous metas. So even though it's in a top bucket, I'm just like, you know what? It's still worth it. It's just really freaking good.
Yep. So back to Quicksand Elemental. It's rated high, but I think people keep misusing it in the arena. Giving all enemy minions -2 attack this turn usually is the same as giving one enemy minion -2 attack this turn. And you should play it as such. if you can get any amount of value from this guy's battle cry to like save your minion, like you've won. Like imagine your opponent plays a 3-2 and you play a 2-3 right before that. And now you have this elemental that can come out, the quicksand elemental that can come out. So your 2-3 becomes a 2-2 and you get a 3-2. What that really means is that you have an extra 2-2 on the board from what a normal interaction that everyone expects would happen would be. An extra 2-2 on the board, and you have only played 4 mana's worth of stuff, period. So that means you've gotten a plus 50% advantage on the board compared to all the mana that you have spent in this entire game right now.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of swing that should not be allowed to happen in a game. So if that kind of stuff opens up, it's a huge advantage. But later on, and I think most people do that. That's not a hard play to make. But later on in the mid game, I see my opponent sometimes like eventually play a quicksand elemental. I'm like, wait, you've had this card for like this long. You just didn't want to like save a minion or like add 2 health to something. Like this can read plus 2 health to a minion if you're going to make a trade anyway, and that's really good. Like, you're getting an extra mana plus card advantage worth of stuff on this for just that one hit. Not to mention, it completely nullifies, like, poison. Right? Like, the poisonous stuff ends up with no attack. So it's one more counter to all these, like, poisonous minions running around in the arena right now. So just anytime you can use it, like, don't wait for the perfect opportunity. Yes, the perfect opportunities for this card is ridiculous, but its body, which is a 3-2 body, like there's a reason Blizzard was comfortable printing this card on a 3-2 body for 2 mana. It's because the ability is really good and can get really out of hand, but it's not like its maximum potential is way higher than the area that you're okay using it at just to get a 3-2 body on the board in the arena.
Yep.
So I just wanted to make that point by bringing this up because I see people misuse it enough of the time in scenarios, and I'm like, this card's it's gonna be better than how people use it. I've certainly had like a ton of success with this card. Its only downside for me is that it is a 2-drop, and I try to avoid 2-drops. But if it's getting to the point where I feel like I need a 2-drop, like I'll take this in its bucket. It's bucketed pretty highly, second bucket or something. Like it's properly bucketed.
Yeah, I agree. And as always, don't like fall into the ooze effect, as we'll call it, in which you don't drop it for tempo, even though it is clearly advantageous for you to drop it. And this is even worse than the ooze effect, because for the ooze effect, you hold it and you're like, oh man, I'm gonna get that tempo back if they play a huge weapon, which you will actually, and more so. But here, if you don't have the board, its effect is completely useless for you. Yeah. So if you lose the board, you'll hit more enemies. You can hit 5 enemies with it, but you can't capitalize on it at all. So make sure that you just recognize it's like, all right, I'm not getting the value or the super value out of it this game. This game is just a Raptor. I'm cool with that.
Yep. Yeah. Nothing else really to say about this.
That's it.
Yeah. Do you have a question from the GOAT? I haven't had a question from the GOAT for a while.
Yeah. What are we gonna do with our winnings?
Oh yeah. With our Twitch Rivals winnings coming up in 2 days. I don't know. I never have anything fun to do with our winnings. We're going to be in TwitchCon, by the way, guys. This is probably a good time to announce it if we haven't yet. We're both going to be at TwitchCon. This is the first time both of us are at a convention since like 2016 and BlizzCon.
Something like that.
It was really long ago when we both last went to a convention together. So this time, I've never been to TwitchCon before. Merps has been once, twice?
At least once, maybe twice.
maybe twice. I don't remember. You don't remember?
Well, it was either like BlizzCon or TwitchCon. Like I forget which one I went to like twice.
Okay, you went to TwitchCon twice. I don't think you went to BlizzCon twice.
Okay.
So you probably went to TwitchCon twice. I've never been to TwitchCon at all. I'm looking forward to it. It's at the end of September. It's tickets are still available. It's You get to meet all of your favorite Twitch streamers, including us. And if you're a streamer yourself, it's, I don't know, good networking. Also fun parties, I hear. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to go. It's gonna be my like little mini vacation going out to California for a long weekend.
Gonna be a good time. I'm gonna
Yeah.
eat lots and lots of food.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And TwitchCon tickets are not cheap, so that's where the winnings are going to.
All right, sounds good. All right, so yeah, if you guys are going, if you guys want to meet up, make sure tweet at us and let us know. We'll definitely try to meet up with anyone who wants to meet up with us.
Yeah.
We're not getting flooded with those requests, so.
Yep. Cool. That's a question from the goat. Question from the goat brought to you by our Patreons. Patreon.com/grinninggoat. Thank you guys so much for keeping the lights on here at the Lightforge. And any last words about the tournament or the meta before we sign off, Merps?
No, just make sure to watch Twitch Rivals is on Tuesday, August 27th. It starts at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern. And come watch your favorite grumpy arena streamers win the whole damn thing.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys next time. Until then, this is ADWCTA.
This is Merps. Bye.